Good morning. I hope that your Wednesday is off to a good start. Mine is so far. I can't complain. My outdoor office, though it is a bit chilly, a good ship mug. I want to go back to the Gospel of Mark today. This coming Sunday is Transfiguration Sunday, and in my sermon Sunday, I'm going to be drawing from the Old Testament rather than reading the gospel lesson. And so I figured I would take a couple of minutes this morning to reflect on Mark's account of the Transfiguration. We find this in Mark chapter 9. This middle portion of Mark is superbly well written. The middle portion of Mark is just powerful, powerful stuff. So I'm going to read, it's beginning with 9, it's beginning with verse 2. And after 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John, and led them up a high mountain by themselves, and he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became radiant, intensely white, as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Moses with Elijah, and they were talking with Jesus. And Peter said to Jesus, Rabbi, it is good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, and one for Moses, and one for Elijah. For he did not know what to say, for they were terrified. And a cloud overshadowed them, and a voice came out of the cloud. This is my beloved Son, listen to him. And suddenly, looking around, they no longer saw anyone with them but Jesus only. And as they were coming down the mountain, he charged them to tell no one what they had seen, until the Son of Man had risen from the dead. So they kept the matter to themselves, questioning what this rising from the dead might mean. So, like I said, this is Mark's account of the Transfiguration. All 3 of the Synoptic Gospels refer to this event in relatively similar terms, not exactly the same, but it's similar. As a matter of history and geography, it's a little uncertain where the Transfiguration took place. Traditionally, it is thought to be Mount Tabor, which is right adjacent to Nazareth, but some also claim that it took place at Mount Hermon, far to the north, near Caesarea Philippi. And as for me, I don't know enough to make a good case either way. Traditionally, it's thought to have been on Mount Tabor, which is right adjacent to Nazareth, which would make it a place that Jesus knew well, but it could have been at Mount Hermon far to the north. So whatever the case, let's look into what happens. This is, in this event, we have the second time that we hear the audible voice of the Almighty in Mark. And the first time is at Jesus' baptism. At the inauguration of his ministry, we hear the voice of God. You are my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased. And this time and here again in Transfiguration, we've got the audible voice of God. The difference being that this time apparently the voice of God is directed to the disciples. For God says, this is my beloved Son. This event, this voice of God speaking to the disciples, comes at a seminal moment in Jesus' ministry. It's right as he's about to embark on the long trek down southward to Jerusalem. It's right after Jesus had made his first passion prediction in the last portion of Mark chapter 8, and Jesus makes his first passion prediction, and after that he leads them up to the Mount of Transfiguration, and then from here on out, the rest of Mark's gospel is set against the backdrop of the road to Jerusalem, the road to the cross. So we're told 6 days later, he carries them up a high mountain. Carries them up a high mountain, whether it's Tabor or Hermon, who knows, and it doesn't really matter for our purposes. He carries his inner circle up there. Peter, James, and John. And while they were up there, we're told that he's transfigured before them. His clothes become radiantly white. The top of the mountain is shrouded in cloud and light. And this is all you could almost say that what takes place up there on the mountaintop is the theophany. Theophany being a fancy word for one of those occasions where God shows up in the Old Testament. But there are certain hallmarks of a theophany. Dark cloud, fire, light, sometimes a trumpet blasts and the ground shakes, whirlwind occasionally. So you could make a good case, or probably should look at this as being a theophany, that these inner circle of disciples are enabled to see, and right in the center of it is Jesus, talking with the two figures from the Old Testament that play the biggest role in Jewish imagination, Elijah and Moses. And probably it's best to look at it this way, that rather than Jesus being changed, it's probably best to look at it this way, that rather than Jesus being changed, that their eyes are opened so they can see a reality that had been there all along. So this isn't the case where Jesus is magically changed for a few minutes, but rather they are enabled to see something that had been a reality all along. And Peter, of course, gets foot and mouth disease, which he is prone to do, at least before the crucifixion. And oh, Master, it's good that we're here. Let's build 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. And seemed like a good idea at the time, I guess. And Mark pretty much nailed it when he said that they really didn't know what to say. They were so speechless. They didn't know what to say, and Peter felt like he had to say something, so he said, let's build 3 tents. One for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. And all of a sudden, as soon as it had started, Moses and Elijah are gone, and it's just them and Jesus. So what do we do with this? What do we do with it? I think that one good way to begin to lay a handle on it is to consider what happens right after this. Jesus and his inner circle, Peter, James, and John, come down the mountain, and when they come down the mountain, they are greeted by a great controversy. The rest of the disciples are embroiled in a heated argument, shouting match with some Pharisees and others because they had been unable to cast out a demon. So they come down the mountain, and as soon as they get down the mountain, they're greeted by, as we might put it, a full-blown 5-alarm controversy, because these other disciples hadn't been able to help a demon-possessed boy. And then after that event, which is one of my favorite passages, it's Mark 14-29. Everything else is the slow trek to Jerusalem. You know, every once in a while, we have an event where we know we're in the presence of God. Doesn't happen super often for most of us, but every so often we know that we're in the presence of God. Sometimes it might be a special place. We are in a special place, and as the ancient Celts put it, we realize that it's a thin place, where the veil between earth and heaven is particularly thin. Sometimes it is the right person, but every so often something happens and we realize we're in the presence of God. Literally or figuratively, every so often we have a mountaintop moment. The true purpose of the mountaintop, though, isn't the mountaintop. The true purpose of the mountaintop isn't what happens on the mountaintop. The true purpose is what happens when we get down off the mountain. The true purpose is not the few seconds or few minutes that we have on the mountaintop. The purpose is always found when we get down into the valley. When we get down into the valley and we deal with real life, with the aggravations and annoyances and just day-to-day stuff of real life. That's the purpose of the mountaintop. We're not given these fleeting glimpses of glory, the mountaintop moments where we know we're in the presence of God, just for the purpose of those few minutes. We are given the mountaintop moments so that we can latch on to them and remember them when we are dealing with the stuff in the valley. We spend a lot more time in valleys than we do up on the spiritual mountaintops, but the mountaintops are there to give us courage and give us something we can latch on to when we're in the valley. So those mountaintops, and we remember them and we cling to them, and we know, remembering them, that God is there. God is there. That there is more to what is there than what we can see with our naked eye. So, remember the mountaintop moments of your life. Remember them and cling to them when you happen to be going through a valley, and anticipate mountaintop moments. You can't prepare for them, you cannot plan them, but perhaps have your eyes open to recognize when they happen. So with that, have a great rest of your Wednesday.